Let me tell you something about Star Trek Into Darkness. It's the best Star Trek movie in over 20 years. I think it's better than every Star Trek movie made since Star Trek VI, my beloved Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Better than all of the next generation Star Trek movies. Better than First Contact. What makes it so good? Why is it such a good movie? Well, I love what J.J. Abrams has done with his first film in 2009 and then now with this film, Star Trek Into Darkness. He has really reinvigorated this whole franchise. Made Star Trek, which is coming up in a few years on 50 years. A 50-year-old franchise that has had now 12 feature-length films plus 5 television series plus, countless novelizations and comic books and action figures. It's one of the most overexposed pieces of entertainment that you could possibly name. I mean, it's beyond anything, with the possible exception of maybe Star Wars and some of the more ubiquitous comic book superheroes like Superman or Batman or something like that. It's been everywhere for like almost 50 years. And yet, with his previous film and with this film now, Star Trek Into Darkness, J.J. Abrams is able to show us something of Star Trek that we have not seen before. It doesn't feel like a retread. It doesn't feel like a rehash. It feels fresh and new and original and inventive and imaginative and exciting. And that's something that after Star Trek Nemesis came out, I never would have thought that we could be not just one, but 2 movies in to this rebooted franchise. And there would be so much life in this new version of Star Trek. It's really stunning and really exciting to see as a fan. What makes it so good is that Abrams is able to show us a version of Star Trek, like he did in his previous film, that has a palpable sense of reality. It has a very tactile reality to it, especially the scenes on Earth. And I was very happy to see there are extensive scenes that take place on Earth in this Star Trek movie, which is nice because, as I said way back when I started reviewing the Star Trek movies a few weeks ago, that's something that I feel is often missing. The ties of these characters to Earth, the reminders that these people are essentially astronauts. These are the future versions of space explorers, and they're out in the stars having adventures, but they're people like us. Even Spock, the most prominent alien character, is half human. He's one of us, and that's just something very appealing to me, and that comes through very strong in this movie. More so than any other Star Trek movie. When they're on Earth, it feels like Earth. And it feels like, at least emotionally, it feels like a plausible future. There are early scenes set in people's homes, set in hospitals, set in government buildings on Earth. And it feels like we're looking at real places. We're not looking at sets. We're not looking at things that have been designed to make us think of the future. There are futuristic details here and there. There are dressings in the sets. There are special effects that show us that we are not looking at a contemporary world. We're looking at a future world. But it's still recognizably Earth, and it feels real. It feels like it's an actual place. And that is so important, that grounding and a feeling of reality. Even though what we're going to see in the movie is, jaunts to the stars and giant spaceships firing phasers at each other and all this really incredible out there sci-fi fantasy stuff. It's grounded in a feeling of reality. And that is something that even some of the best Star Trek films miss out on or forget about or just don't really bother with. And Abrams nails it with this, even more so than with Star Trek in 2009. He absolutely nails that feeling of reality. Very important. And there's also a very strong emotional resonance. There are scenes in this movie that are very moving. He really cuts to the core of these characters and their relationships and the significance of their choices and the consequences of their choices. And it's when they do heroic things, when they act selflessly to save others, when they have these difficult moral choices to make. It's affecting. It really works. It really got me. It's really interested in these people and in the challenges that they face and in who they are as characters. And I really, really responded to that very strongly. I mentioned how fresh and how exciting and new and creative this movie feels, but I would be remiss if I didn't also mention how familiar it is. And familiar in a good way, not familiar in a bad way that makes it feel like we've seen all this shit before. Although, some of this shit we have seen before. There are literally scenes from this movie that are taken at times with verbatim dialogue from earlier episodes or earlier films of Star Trek. And there's a different spin on them. They're staged in a different ways. Certain roles are reversed, and those of you who have seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil anything for you. I know sometimes I've spoken disparagingly about spoilers and spoiler warnings. I call them wussy warnings and stuff like that. But I realize now that even though I don't care, other people care, and it's insensitive of me to disregard the feelings of other people, and I'm trying to be a better person. So I'm not going to spoil any of the pertinent plot details in this review. But there are, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. There's a very, very important scene not right at the end, but maybe toward the end, that is a duplicate of a very famous previous scene in a previous Star Trek film, just with some very significant role reversals, and it plays beautifully. It's absolutely beautiful. Even though as soon as it starts to happen, you can sort of, or at least I could, you just see which direction it's going, and it just goes straight ahead. There's not really any twists and turns. It plays out as you expect it to play out once you realize what's going on, and yet it's still so satisfying. It's just a wonderful scene, and one of many, many wonderful scenes in a really, really effective movie. Unless you are just a completely joyless fucking canon Nazi. If you're a Star Trek fan, I must highly recommend that you see this movie, because it's fun. It's a fun movie. That's what I've been trying to get at these last few minutes. I keep getting sidetracked. It feels fresh and new, but it also feels familiar. And one of the ways that it feels familiar, especially when compared to the original TV series, is that it's a combination of fun, rip-roaring, sort of pulpy space adventure and very pointed social commentary. And that's something that is present very strongly in this movie that was largely absent, if not, some would say completely absent, from the previous Abrams Star Trek, which was all about the adventure, and that is that social commentary, that political point of view. There is a very definite political, social commentary in this film. There are allegorical things going on here. So for those of you who are maybe worried that under the Abrams regime, Star Trek would lose its conscience and its soul and just sort of become, you know, just a generic action space adventure, worry not. Because there is very definitely social commentary and relevant to our modern times, having to do with terrorism, having to do with overreach of government, very strong commentary, questions asked, characters forced to wrestle with moral and ethical questions that will be very familiar to those of you who are interested in the issue of the Obama administration deploying Predator drones to deal with terrorists. Really, really immediately recognizable as a social commentary, and yet not so ham-fisted and obvious that it takes away from the story. It's all integrated very well, and like I say, perfect combination of fun, pulpy space adventure and social commentary. The perfect recipe for Star Trek. That's what, to me, what Star Trek ought to be. It ought to be a fun, sort of exciting, edge of your seat adventure, but also with some serious things to say beneath the surface. And that is what Star Trek Into Darkness does. That's what it is. It's a fantastic movie. Judged purely as an action movie, it's the best Star Trek movie ever made. The action scenes are so well staged, well edited, well shot. Everything in terms of the action in the film is just as good as it can be. Better than anything Star Trek has ever done. The acting is terrific. The leads, Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana. Simon Pegg, John Cho, Anton Yelchin, Bruce Greenwood, my man, back as Captain Pike, or Admiral Pike now. Always wonderful to see him. Plays a very important role this time in Benedict Cumberbatch as the villain, who I will not name for you here because you might not have seen the movie yet and you might not know who he is. They've been very sort of cheeky about that. But he's amazing. He's awesome. His character, when I say that the screenplay is well written, it's because the Cumberbatch character goes through a couple of twists and turns. There are some reveals, and then there's another reveal that reveals the previous reveal might not have been to be trusted. It's a really well plotted, well laid out script with some really clever reveals to keep things moving and to keep things interesting toward the end. Some really strong, really heavy emotional scenes for these people to play. Some really great scenes between Kirk and Spock, between Scotty and Spock, and Scotty and Kirk, and just some really, really well done acting in this. Again, lends it some weight, lends it that the feeling of reality and the feeling of emotional weight to the characters. Really, really raises the emotional stakes for this film. Makes it feel like something is happening, makes it mean something to you as an audience member. We also get to see a fleeting glimpse of the Klingons in this movie. The first time we see Klingons in the Abrams verse, and they do not disappoint. They're only around for one scene. They're not like a major presence in the movie. But what I really appreciated was that Klingons in this movie really feel dangerous, and they in a way that they've never felt in any other incarnation of Star Trek. They feel really, really threatening and dangerous. We see them, they're very dark, they're very mysterious. Most of them are helmeted. We only actually see like the uncovered face of one of them, and he looks very fearsome and very rough, and they feel like a really threatening, villainous presence. And if they play a larger role in future films in this franchise, based on their brief little appearance here, that's a really exciting prospect, because Klingons in the past in Star Trek, especially in the movies, when we saw them in Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 5, they're sort of played for laughs. They're almost comical. And then even in Star Trek 6, where they were primary antagonists, they were sort of defeated. They were like an empire in decline. But these Klingons you see in Star Trek Into Darkness, those are some bad dudes. And they feel like they're a threat. And they feel really, really dangerous. And that again, just very exciting. This whole movie is just an incredibly exciting, encouraging movie. For if you're a Star Trek fan like me and you're looking forward to future episodes in this series, in this franchise, I can't imagine you not being encouraged by this movie. Again, as I said, unless you're just a fucking canon Nazi that if you didn't like the previous movie, you probably won't like this one. If you're like me and you really, really enjoyed the first Abrams Star Trek, you'll really like this one. It ends on a really interesting note. It ends in a very encouraging, exciting, positive direction that opens the door for where the next film could go, and sets the stage for a very classic Star Trek situation, and just. It's just a great movie, God damn it! It's just I've watched these movies again leading up to this. We've been talking about them for weeks in these videos. I really, really dig Star Trek. It's one of my favorite things. It's just a fun thing to watch and to enjoy, and even when it's bad, it's usually bad in a good way. And this movie, Star Trek Into Darkness, is not bad in a good way. It's fucking good in a good way. There is one moment that is just total cheese that I can't explain, I can't account for any other way. It's just total cheese, and it's really only there as a callback to something from a previous version of Star Trek. And there are a few of those in here, not too many, but a few of those. And there's one moment, and it's a Spock moment, where he does something that's maybe a little bit out of character. Although then again, maybe not out of character considering his arc in the movie, but. It's something that he does that someone else did in a previous film, and it's just really, it's cheesy and just big and absurd and ridiculous, but it worked for me. The whole movie worked for me. It's a fucking great movie. Star Trek Into Darkness is a really good movie. Best Star Trek movie in 20 goddamn years. I said it.